Okay.
Hello and welcome. I'm Iris Benrubi, your host on Building Relationships in Isolation. And today I'm really excited to have Amy Vodarek. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
And I love your motto, which is become the best version of you so you can take care of what matters most. So, how does that fit into our conversation, building relationships in isolation with everything that's been happening over the last couple months and people feeling isolated, disconnected, too connected? How does that all fit in?
Such a good question. And it's so relevant, having just sent two of my four out the door to go do anything, anything outside. I think be the best version of you is right now. What does that look like? And really having a sense of what do you need to really take care of yourself right now so that you can then show up and be fully present in the moments that really count. Right now, the demands on many of us are different, and they may feel heavier and harder than they have in the past because there's an undercurrent of maybe anxiety or worry about what's going on. And I think when we can actually do sort of next level self-care, whatever that means to you, whether that is finding quiet for a few minutes every day, whether that's being outside, or whether it's your exercise and nutrition routine. I mean, it's something different for everybody, but to fill our own tank so that we can really be that kind of person that can take care of what matters most.
Yeah, I love that because so often, especially women, I'm going to say, we've been conditioned to put our needs aside and to take care of others. And there's men as well. I'm not going to say that it's just women, that this isn't a real opportunity. It's really been magnified for us, the importance of us taking care of ourselves so that we do have more for others. So I love that. And I know that you talk about having a practice to notice your moods. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so moods is something that often is missed, and it can be. I've learned through my own journey to get to this moment, that moods aren't just good and bad. Moods actually have a range, and that we can wake up in a mood and go to bed in a mood and feel that we have no control over the mood. We're just in a bad mood or we're in a good mood. And so part of the work that I've done for myself and then with my clients is to really pay attention to checking in with our mood. And you can even have like a mood thermometer for yourself. Where am I in my mood trajectory? And then being with the question of what do I need to then shift my mood so that I can open possibilities, that I can see the way I want to be rather than how I feel right now. So it gets us out of feeling almost like a victim to our mood. And moods can be, in a range from enthusiastic and high energy moods to really low and really feeling there are very little possibilities accessible to us. And then the range between our moods, like a lot of my clients are dealing right now with a mood of resignation. These things are happening to me. I just have to accept what is. I feel like I have no power over anything. And it's a depletion mood, right? It kind of removes the element of what's possible for me today. And so noticing that then gives us the opportunity to say, what's the mood that would serve me better? What's the mood that would allow me to be more playful or be more open to new ideas today? And then figuring out what is it, and for each of us, again, it's different, much like self-care, is what do I know lifts my mood, supports my mood, shores up my mood. So that's where mood comes in for me.
Yeah, so what I like in that is I'm hearing several steps. The first step is to recognize that we do have moods rather than, what I talk about, the fish swims in the water and doesn't recognize it's in the water. So one, recognize we have moods. Two, step back and have a look at what is the mood that's going on now. Three, decide, is this mood empowering me, encouraging me, moving me forward to what I want? If yes, keep going. And if not, what is a more empowering, playful mood that I could take on? Is that?
Yeah, exactly. And also I think too, we can feel a lot of pressure to be in a great mood and be happy all the time. And I think it's really helpful to take that pressure off and allow ourselves to say, I'm sad. I'm sad, that my daughter's missing her graduation today. I'm sad that I can't see these people that I love to see. And that's okay. And then it's, with the emotion of sadness, then what's a way that we can acknowledge the sadness and then also take care so that we can see other ways of being in the world that make us feel better.
Yeah, so I'd like to continue one more step, which is you recognize that you're in resignation or you're in sadness. You'd like to be playful, but you're in sadness. So how do you move from one mood to the other?
Yeah, I think it's incremental at times, right? I think it can be really hard to go from I'm really sad and I'm in a low mood to I'm enthusiastic and feeling I've got everything possible. But maybe the mood of acceptance is one that we can get ourselves to. One that, okay, I accept that there are things that I can do and I accept there's things I can't do and I accept that this moment is hard. And I also accept that there will be other opportunities for me in the future. So I think just recognizing that sometimes we can do the big leap and sometimes we can't, but if we can at least get ourselves to acceptance, we're up a notch.
Yeah, and what is that acceptance? Often people feel like it's taking one for the team. I'll just put up to it, with it, or resign to it. What does acceptance actually mean?
So what I listen when you say that is actually sacrifice. And so acceptance is I see the things that are happening. I recognize what's in my circle of influence and what isn't. And I'm choosing to focus on my circle of influence. Does that help?
Yeah, so it's about not resisting what you can't change. Because
acknowledging it's there, right?
Acknowledging it's there and recognizing that we can't change COVID on our own. We can contribute to minimizing the impact, but also recognize, like what you talked about, what's in my domain? What is it that I can have an impact on? I can focus on that, which creates resistance, or I can focus on what it is that I can impact, which is what you're talking about is acceptance, which allows us to, I don't know if the word is so much let go of the resignation. What would be the word that you would describe it with?
I think let go is or ease off, I think it's just easing off that sense of I don't have anything I can control here. I'm a victim in this circumstance. An example is, March 15th, my Jeep died. Just like that. My engine died. I need a new transmission, a new engine. And initially I went down and I was in a place of resignation. And then I started to look at, and, I can accept that I need a new vehicle, but I can also look at, well, what a time to not need a vehicle. It's the only time in my life that I haven't needed to be like on the fly driving in a million different directions. And so there's also this place of this is what is and what else is in this for me to appreciate. That can also help with acceptance.
Beautiful. Now, I know that you also talk about practices, self-care practices to develop resilience. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I can. And I kind of want to caveat it. Like, I don't have this figured out and I'm not perfect. Like, this is not about getting it right and doing it perfect. Right. I can actually need to really self-coach myself to get back to self-care practices. It's easier for me to overextend than remember. So I just want to put that out there because often when we're listening to other people, we think, oh, they've got it all figured out. And I don't. Okay. So let me be frank. But self-care is noticing when I'm feeling like, or you're feeling that I can't do anymore. I'm at my edge. If one more person asks one more thing of me, and before we even get to that point, to be able to say, what is it I'm longing for? What am I craving right now that is good for me? That's going to make me feel like I'm taking care of myself. It's the commitment to take care of self versus the actual activity that we want to nurture. So is it to step outside and turn your face to the sun? Is it to go for a walk? Is it to ask for people to respect some privacy and give you 30 minutes of quiet? Whatever it is for you, it's when we listen to that sense of I need something and we honor it rather than stuff it away to then go do one more thing for work, for someone else, for whatever.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about cars and that I have a little pink two-seater convertible Miata that I love, and the battery wouldn't work on Sunday, so I decided I'm going to push it out of the way so I can get my other car. And then it started to roll down, and there's nobody sitting in it. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to run, open the door, sit down. I'm wearing my Birkenstock, so my shoe came off, my heel is rubbing on the floor. And in that panic, I couldn't remember which was the brake.
Oh my gosh.
I put the brake on, and it was like, okay, just went a bit on the slant. I got out of the car, and instead of sitting with the panic that I had, my body was shaking. I kept going on. I did what I needed to do. I put the top back up. I got my other car, started to drive, called my partner. In that moment, I realized I need to cry. I need to just be with this. I didn't have to. I chose to pull over. So how easy it is to push through those moments when we need something. And when we can be, I was like in tears for like 3 or 4 seconds, and it was gone.
Yeah.
I could breathe then. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And allowing, right? Honoring that moment for yourself. I mean, it's a great story, by the way, right? It's a great story, and I can envision the Birkenstock flying and the jumping in and wait, what do I push? But to take the pause and just say, either I push through this and I ignore it, and it's going to come out later, right? Or I just have the release now so that I can then honor this moment that's been really stressful. I almost lost my car, my shoe, my whatever. And then move forward.
Yeah. And so I like what you talked about, honoring that moment. It's so easy for us to just, do what we're supposed to do, go on with life, what's next, instead of just honoring what's real for us in that moment.
Yeah, I have a different example. It's not as fun or cute as yours, but it still represents the moment. I mean, there's been losses, right? We've all lost things along this COVID journey, some greater than others and some very significant. But little losses, like losing my daughter's final dance season and my other daughter's final recital at university. And there's been a lot of, but we're healthy, we're good, we're going to keep going, we'll do our best. And then there's been a few moments of just like, let's just cry. Like, let's just cry about these missed moments together and on our own, but acknowledge that it's not okay to miss the moments. We'll make it okay. But those moments are moments that are lost, and there's a grieving that goes with that. And to not acknowledge the grieving, I think it actually eats at us. I think it churns inside us. So the release actually felt good. And, we were watching some old dance videos and then started just laughing together. And it was a nice moment after that, but we needed the moment.
Beautiful. So I'm hearing about giving ourselves permission.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when we do the self-care practices, how does that link into resilience?
That's a good question. And resilience, it's been coming up a lot about what is resilience. I mean, we're always in a space of needing to nurture resilience, COVID or no COVID. There's always times that challenge us or call us to step up in ways that are uncomfortable or unfamiliar. And resilience is something we draw on. But the practices, it's difficult to be resilient when we're depleted, when our tank is empty, when we've been in overwhelm or overcommitment for so long that the ability to shift, to open to a new pivot, to take things as they come and look for a silver lining or a possibility shrinks the more overcommitted and overextended we are. So that's where I see self-care is actually giving us the bandwidth to be able to absorb some of the things that are happening to us, to then ask questions about what am I going to do with all this to move forward in the direction that I want, or to take care of these loved ones in front of me who are emotionally needing a lot of my care and attention, whatever it is. So that's where I see self-care is crucial for resilience. I think without it, then we also have a story, right? When we don't take care of ourselves, we also trash ourselves, have head trash, right? We have negative self-talk when we don't take care of ourselves. Like, oh, I said I was going to go for a walk and I didn't. There I go again, for instance, where we break promises to ourselves. And that tugs away on our ability to then be able to absorb and take on the challenges and the emotions that we might be facing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I thought maybe we should define resilience. What does resilience mean for you?
Yeah, and sometimes you hear about it in a way of bounce back, and I see it a little differently. I think it's the ability to stay to the course that matters to you, to take care of what you care about, to take the actions needed to either take care of yourself or take care of others, and to move towards the future you want. I caution the bounce back because right now, bounce back would indicate we're going back to what was, and I'm not sure that that's actually the direction we're heading. I think we're creating something different.
Yeah, I actually interviewed a futurist who, talks to the government, all kinds of big institutions about what's coming up. And he talked about we're not going to bounce back, we're going to bounce forward. We need to create a new future that we even figured out what it is yet.
Yeah, and resilience isn't, it's what gets us to the next phase, right? It's resilience is what keeps us moving through the gaps, through not knowing, for instance. I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I'm going to take the next step. And resilience helps us take that next step.
Beautiful. So we've got a couple questions, but before we
Sure.
go there, I wanted to ask you, you touched on silver lining. Could you speak about that
Yeah.
more? Because a lot of people are looking at this and go, there's no silver lining in this. I've lost my job, I've lost income, maybe I've lost family members, I've lost opportunities. There are a lot of losses. So how do you see the silver lining in that?
Yeah. And so when I talk about silver linings, I'm not whitewashing at all as a silver lining. I'm looking for those moments to grab onto. So for instance, when the Jeep died, and I mean, it sounds trivial to many. To me, I'm a one vehicle single parent. So it was significant in my ability to get groceries for my parents, etc. But the silver lining was most of my client work, which is go to the client or go deliver a workshop or whatever, was no longer go anywhere. So it truly is the first time that I could do my work and not cancel appointments by not having a vehicle. So I looked for where can I just settle in with what is and be appreciative to that the Jeep, by the way, is still in my driveway with a flat now too. So it's like, it's there for me to address. But in the moment I was able to, okay, well, and the other thing, it was a broke down when my youngest was driving it. As I'd said, go for a nice drive, clear your head, because she couldn't see her friends, put your radio on. And of course it broke down. Right. And so I was also like, okay, well, thank goodness she's okay. She knew to pull over. And then my son was back home from school, which was something that normally wouldn't have happened either. And he has a car, so we could go rescue her, get me to the car. And he, in his previous life, was an auto mechanic. So he was also able to diagnose it for me. So it's like all these little tiny, okay, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I'm appreciative to that. Am I happy the Jeep is like dead in my driveway? No, because it's a big next step that I'm going to have to sort out. But there's been little moments where I could say, okay, well, that was, that I'm glad that it turned out that way. That's what I mean by silver linings.
I was going to say, I really like that because it's not about denying what happened, but it's about making choices to look over here as to what is working, what is the positive, what is the luck. Lucky it didn't break down while she was on the highway. Like there's all kinds of ways that we can choose to look at something. And yes, we still have a broken down Jeep.
Yeah, and I think, to those who are listening, that might seem like almost a trivial example because it's external. It's something that's resolvable, right? I can find a solution to that. If you're in a harder space, and I have had harder spaces for sure where silver linings felt I had to dig a lot harder for them. But even to find something small, even that little moment, like I'm appreciative of this conversation. I'm appreciative of, whatever. I can reach out and call this person and have a fulfilling conversation. I can turn to a book and find some kind of solace in a book. I mean, it's really, there are moments when we have to actually initiate finding the silver lining.
Yeah. And the piece that I would add to that is to all our listeners to be careful not to minimize anything because it's only external, because we haven't lost a family member. Whatever
Yeah.
losses you've had, there's still losses, and there's still a need for a moment of grief, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's sort of where I was heading with the moment of, crying, all of us, that my two of my four laying on my bed, watching videos and just crying, at what we weren't going to have next. We all know, we've had these conversations around the dinner table, what are we grateful for? We're grateful we're healthy. One, we're grateful the grandparents remain healthy. But to deprive my kids, for instance, or myself of those lost savory moments, those things we're so looking forward to, that doesn't help, right? Because it's still there. It doesn't go away. Yeah.
There's still grief in it, and there's a silver lining, and there's still grief, and there's a silver lining. It's not one or the other, it's
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. And sometimes it can feel like this tension we're, trying to manage between the two.
Yeah, the two realities. We have
Hmm.
to learn to balance and hold two realities at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so there's a comment here and a couple questions. So Deb said, this is so interesting. Living by myself and working by myself has been tough. Self-care has been paramount to getting through the day and understanding moods, etc. So thank you, Deb. Sanjay says, he said, she said, I wish I had said that. I would like to say this to him, her or him. I get this ruminating, repeating thoughts. Is that considered mood or monkey mind or default state of mind? She's asking, how do I effectively intervene and express and change into a more positive state of mind?
Beautiful. Just to be in the question is step one, just to notice, like the example you gave about the fish in water. It's not till we pull the fish out that they know they were ever there, right? So the fact that you're asking the question is beautiful, because when we can begin to notice, wow, I've got this, circular thought that just keeps nagging at me like a stone in my shoe. What's a different thought that I would like to have? It might be journaling, to write it all out and begin to take a look at it as an observer, to be able to look at what you've written down and say, well, that's how I see things. Interesting. No wonder I'm feeling a bit stuck over here. So I think the first step is always noticing the monkey mind. And then mood, again, it's not one or the other. So mood is something that we can, as I said earlier, we can wake up in. And it can influence our thinking. It can influence our emotions, and it can influence even our body and how our body moves through the day. When we can see our mood, then we can also begin to see the way it's shaping and impacting our thoughts and the stories we're telling ourselves. So they're interrelated, they're not separate. And when we can pay attention to the stories we're saying to ourselves, for instance, in the Good Enough book that I co-authored, we interviewed 150 women. And one of the things that came up in that book was this pervasive thought of, I'm not quite there yet. I haven't got enough certificates yet. Oh, there I go again. I'm going to mess this up. And when we can see that thought, then we have an opportunity to say, okay, that's interesting. What else is possible for me here other than that? And I recognize the inner critic as something that we live with. And sometimes it's silent. And then when we go to that place of uncertainty, or taking that new step that's unfamiliar, it can get really active. And so to notice it and say, I see you, inner critic voice or negative self-talk. And thank you for showing up and reminding me that you're there. And I choose to think this instead, or to take this action instead. So just, that's where I would go with responding to that question at this time.
Beautiful. And let's do, oops, I am clicked on the wrong thing, chat. Can you elaborate on the interrelationship of feelings, emotions, moods, and thoughts? What is the short, medium, and long term of these states?
Wow. Okay, so that was like my whole coaching program. The first one I took. Yeah, so moods and emotions are different. Okay, so moods are something that, again, we can just find ourselves in. So another way to give an example of that is if you think of cities. Cities have a mood, right? So Toronto has a mood versus New York's mood versus Halifax. They have different moods, and I'm not going to try to tell you which mood they are. You can maybe imagine what mood they would be in and think of other cities that you've been in. Emotions are things that happen in relation to events and circumstance and stories. And so those stories that we create and the ways in which we live and inhabit these stories. So emotions are things that we experience, and they actually put us in motion to take an action. So that's the difference. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten the second part of the question, but I think it was a hard question, actually.
The short, medium, and long term of these states.
I'm not exactly sure what you mean. I know emotions, we go through a larger range of emotions through a day, for instance, whereas moods can be longer. We can live in a mood. I could live my whole life in a mood of resignation, but within that mood, I will experience a wide range of emotions over my lifetime. I think that
Yeah.
might get to it.
I like that you use that, because we can even think of, any friends or people or even family that we know that are victims. That's their mood that they filter everything through. Doesn't mean that they can't feel joy for a moment or anger, but their pervasive mood is resignation. Would that be fair?
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what you were saying, is they see themselves as a victim through that lens from a mood of resignation. Yeah.
All right, Amy, for people who want to get a hold of you, where can they find more about you?
Well, they can visit me at insightedge.ca, and there's a little button there you can click and you can book a call with me and we can explore what you're looking for. I have different programs, and I've launched my podcast, Insight Edge with Amy. It's now on Apple Podcast iTunes. Anyway,
Congratulations.
yeah, it was very, I didn't plan to launch during a pandemic, but there you go. So those are two ways to find me. And on LinkedIn, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn and just make a little note that you heard me here with Iris.
Beautiful. My last question to you, Amy, if there was one thing you would hope our viewers take away, what would that be?
That's a beautiful question. It really is about the power of the possible. When things are feeling hard and difficult, and it's hard to bring yourself up to seeing what else is there for you in this life that we're in, is to believe in the power of the possible, that there's always another conversation, there's always a new possibility. And sometimes actually the best thing you can do is have a conversation with somebody to explore possibility, and be selective, like pick somebody that can lift you into the space of possibility and not hold you down to a place of feeling that you have no control. So that would be my message.
Yeah, you don't want somebody who says, yeah, I know what you mean, it really sucks.
Yeah, no, that's not helpful at all. No.
All right, and Deb said here, thank you, ladies, for your insight and time. And I'm going to say, Amy, thank you for the time that you've given us, the strategies that you shared, your beautiful cars story, and the difference that you make in the world.
Thank you, Iris, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.